The camera opens on the quiet streets of Paris in the early 1950s. The world is changing, and so is France. People are hungry for new faces, new dreams, new voices that could carry them beyond the shadows of war. In a small apartment, a young girl stands by the window. She is only in her teens, her golden hair falling loosely, her eyes restless. Her name is Brigitte Bardot. No one could have guessed that this shy ballet student would one day become one of the most famous women in the world. But Brigitte herself could feel it. Deep inside, she carried both a fire and a fear. She was not like other girls. She wanted freedom. She wanted to express beauty, but she was also terrified of the world's judgment. Her parents were strict. Her mother believed in discipline, in proper manners, in silence at the dinner table. Brigitte often felt trapped, as if her voice didn't matter. But every time she stepped into the world of dance, she felt alive. Then came a moment that changed everything. A fashion magazine was searching for a fresh face. A friend suggested Brigitte. At first she refused, too shy, too insecure. But fate has its way of pushing us forward. She went for the audition. When the photographs were published, Paris stopped. Her beauty was not loud. It was not forced. It was raw, honest, natural. Her eyes carried both innocence and rebellion. She had something the world hadn't seen before. But with recognition came whispers. People judged her. Some called her too bold, too free, too dangerous. Brigitte was only 17. Imagine being that young, and already feeling the weight of a city's gaze. The suspense built the day she was called for her first film. And God created woman. The director saw something in her, a force that could shake cinema. But the night before shooting, Brigitte couldn't sleep. Her hands trembled. She wondered, will they laugh at me? Will I fail? Am I just a girl pretending to be someone else? She walked into the set the next morning with fear written across her face. The lights were heavy, the cameras unforgiving. The crew whispered. They had doubts. But when the director shouted action, something happened. Brigitte transformed. The shy girl disappeared. In her place stood a woman the world had never seen. Free, sensual, yet vulnerable. She wasn't acting. She was living. Audiences who watched the film later didn't just see a performance. They saw truth. And that truth scared many because it challenged old ideas about women, love, and freedom. Overnight, Brigitte Bardot became a symbol. People put her on magazine covers, fashion houses copied her style, men adored her, women wanted to be her. But fame is a double-edged sword. Behind the flashing cameras, Brigitte still felt the same insecurity. She longed for love, for kindness, for a world where she wasn't treated like a product. As she walked down crowded streets with photographers chasing her, she whispered to herself, I am not just an image. I am a person. And this became the battle of her life, balancing the world's obsession with her beauty against her search for meaning. The part ends with her sitting alone in her dressing room after a long day, looking into the mirror. The applause from outside fades. She touches her reflection and softly says, who am I really? A question that would define the rest of her journey. The applause grew louder with every passing day. Newspapers in France and beyond declared her the new face of beauty, the new voice of freedom. Photographers waited outside her door. Men sent her love letters. Designers copied her clothes, her hairstyle, even the way she walked. Brigitte Bardot was no longer a girl. She had become a symbol. But symbols carry weight. And that weight was crushing. Imagine being in your early 20s, unable to walk the streets of Paris without strangers reaching for your hand, without cameras chasing your steps. Imagine waking up each morning and wondering if people admired you for who you truly were, or only for the image they had built in their minds. Inside her, Brigitte still felt like the same young girl who once danced alone in a quiet room. The difference was that now, the whole world was watching. The success of "And God Created Woman" had made her famous beyond France. Hollywood wanted her, Italy wanted her, the world wanted her. She was called the French Marilyn Monroe, but Brigitte never liked comparisons. She wanted to be herself, not a reflection of someone else. Yet, being herself was the hardest role to play. Behind the glamour, her personal life was fragile. She married young, believing love could protect her from the storms of fame. But fame is cruel to love. It leaves little space for privacy, for peace. Rumors filled newspapers. Photographers followed her even on holidays, and whispers poisoned her marriage. Every fight, every tear, every doubt was magnified by the eyes of the world. She once said to a friend, "I feel like a bird in a golden cage." Yes, the cage was beautiful, admired, adored, but it was still a cage. The turning point came when one of her films was released to both great praise and harsh criticism. Some called her brilliant, others called her scandalous. Brigitte felt torn apart. One night, after reading cruel words in a newspaper, she locked herself in her room. She didn't want to be seen. She didn't want to be Brigitte Bardot, the star. She just wanted to be Brigitte, the girl who once danced without fear of judgment. But she also knew that hiding wasn't the answer. In the silence of that night, Brigitte asked herself a painful question. What do I want from all of this? Fame, money, applause, or something deeper? The answer came slowly. She wanted truth. She wanted to use her voice not just for glamour, but for meaning. This was the beginning of a quiet transformation. She started to see fame not only as a curse, but also as a responsibility. When she smiled at the camera, it could inspire millions. When she spoke about freedom, it could move a generation of women who longed to break away from strict traditions. Brigitte Bardot was more than a star. She was becoming a voice of change. Yet, the battle was not over. Inside her heart, loneliness lingered. She longed for someone who could see past the makeup, the headlines, the glamorous dresses, and simply love the woman she truly was. Every time she returned home after long hours of shooting, she removed the heavy makeup, let her hair down, and sat in front of the mirror. Her reflection whispered back, "Is this the price of being loved by the world? That I remain unloved in private?" Suspense built again when her health began to suffer. Exhaustion from endless shoots, emotional breakdowns from constant pressure. Her body was giving signals that her spirit was tired. Yet, she refused to give up. Because deep inside, she carried resilience. She remembered her strict mother's discipline, her ballet training, the long hours of practice. Those lessons had given her strength to survive storms. So she returned to the set, stronger. But this time, something had changed. She no longer wanted to play just roles written by others. She wanted to live her own story. And slowly, Brigitte Bardot was preparing to make a choice that would shock the world. One that would prove that sometimes the greatest act of courage is to walk away. The part ends with her standing on a film set, surrounded by bright lights, applause, and admiration, but her eyes drift toward the door. The camera lingers on her face. She looks calm, yet determined, as if she is about to leave behind everything others thought she could never escape. The world could not believe it when whispers began to spread. Brigitte Bardot was thinking of leaving cinema. The girl who had defined an era, who had become an international symbol of beauty and freedom, was quietly planning to walk away. But to understand this moment, you have to imagine what her days had become. She woke each morning to photographers hiding outside her gate. Every step on the street was followed by flashing cameras and shouting voices. Her private life was never private. Every smile was captured, every tear became a headline. Brigitte had given the world so much of herself, her face, her body, her emotions. Yet she felt she had little left inside. She was still so young, but the weight of fame made her feel old. The breaking point came during one film shoot. She was exhausted, her eyes heavy, her spirit drained. Yet the director demanded more. The crew watched closely, and the cameras rolled without mercy. At one point, Brigitte collapsed into a chair. She whispered, "I am not a machine, but in the eyes of the industry, she was more than a machine. She was a product they could sell, a product they could use." That night, she went home and sat in silence. She thought about the girl she once was, the one who danced ballet in front of the mirror, dreaming not of fame, but of freedom. Tears rolled down her face. She realized she had become trapped by the very success she once longed for. In that quiet moment, she made a decision that would change her life forever. She would step away. She would reclaim her freedom. The news broke like a storm. Journalists couldn't believe it. Directors begged her to stay. Fans protested. But Brigitte Bardot was firm. She was not walking away because she hated art. She was walking away because she loved herself enough to save what was left of her spirit. But leaving fame didn't mean she found peace immediately. The world had branded her as a goddess of beauty. People could not see past the image. Even when she was no longer acting, reporters still followed her, chasing every detail of her life. Brigitte faced loneliness. Relationships came and went. Love seemed to escape her just as peace did. But in her loneliness, she discovered something new. One afternoon, she visited a countryside farm. There, she saw injured animals left behind, uncared for. She bent down beside a wounded dog. As the animal looked into her eyes, she felt something powerful, unconditional trust, pure and simple. In that moment, she realized something she had never fully understood before. Love does not always come from people. Sometimes love is found in the silent gaze of a creature who cannot speak, yet understands. Brigitte felt her heart open in a way it never had on the glamorous sets of cinema. She thought to herself, "I have spent my life being loved for how I look. But now, I want to give love for what truly matters." And so, a new path began to form. She started speaking up for animals. At first, people laughed. They said, "How can a movie star care about stray dogs?" But Brigitte didn't care about their laughter. She knew what she had felt. Slowly, she built a voice not as a symbol of beauty, but as a symbol of compassion. But this transformation was not easy. She faced criticism, even mockery. Yet, every time she saw an animal saved, every time she saw kindness win over cruelty, she knew she was on the right path. Her old life had given her fame. Her new life gave her purpose. The suspense now shifted to a new question. Would the world ever accept Brigitte Bardot not as a star, but as a woman who chose love, humility, and kindness over eternal glory? The part ends with her standing on a quiet beach at sunset. The waves crashed gently. No cameras, no flashing lights, just Brigitte and the open sea. She closes her eyes, lets the wind touch her face, and whispers, "This is freedom." The world had seen Brigitte Bardot as many things: a dancer, an actress, a model, a muse. But now it was about to see her as something entirely different. An activist. After stepping away from the screen, she could have chosen a quiet life, hidden from the public eye. But Brigitte's heart would not allow silence. She had seen too much suffering, animals abandoned, mistreated, forgotten. And each time she looked into their eyes, she felt her own wounds heal. So she spoke. Not in the language of cinema, but in the language of compassion. In interviews, she no longer talked about films or fashion. She talked about animals, about kindness, about responsibility. The reaction was mixed. Some applauded her courage. Others mocked her. Newspapers that once praised her beauty now questioned her choices. Dot, why is a movie star wasting her voice on stray dogs? They asked Dot. But Brigitte knew the answer. She said once, softly but firmly, because they need me. They cannot speak for themselves. I will speak for them. This was not an easy path. She faced powerful opposition. Industries that profited from animal cruelty tried to silence her. Politicians dismissed her as just another celebrity chasing attention. But Brigitte Bardot was not chasing attention. She was chasing justice. There were days when the criticism grew unbearable. She would sit alone at night, reading cruel words written about her, tears in her eyes. She had walked away from the world of cinema to find peace. But even here, peace was hard to hold. And yet, she did not give up. Because each time she looked at an animal saved, each time she touched a life that had once been abandoned, she found strength again. She founded organizations, gave her money, her time, her voice. She turned her fame into a weapon of kindness. Slowly, people began to see. What once seemed like a passing passion was revealed as a lifelong mission. But even as she fought for animals, Brigitte faced another battle: loneliness. The relationships in her life had not always lasted. Some people could not understand her choice to dedicate herself so fully to a cause. Still, Brigitte carried on. Because kindness is often lonely, the suspense grew when she spoke at a public event, her voice trembling with both fear and fire. She looked at the crowd and said, I was once loved by millions for my beauty, but now I ask to be heard for my heart. Those words silenced the critics, even if only for a moment. Brigitte Bardot had transformed. She was no longer just a symbol of glamour. She was a woman of courage, humility, and resilience. In many ways, her fight for animals mirrored her own life. She too had once felt caged, used, misunderstood. Saving them was also saving herself. The years passed and her activism grew stronger. Her name, once linked only to films, was now linked to compassion. And yet, she never lost her humility. Whenever people praised her, she simply said, I do this not for glory but for love. The part ends with Brigitte sitting in a quiet sanctuary surrounded by animals she had helped save. A gentle horse leans its head against her shoulder, and she smiles softly. The camera lingers on her face. Not the glamorous star the world once adored, but a woman whose true beauty was in her kindness. She whispers, perhaps this was my role. All along. Time passes, and with it, the image of Brigitte Bardot as the young actress in and God-created woman begins to fade from memory. But something else remains, something far stronger. The legacy of a woman who dared to transform her life. In her later years, Brigitte no longer cared about red carpets or flashing cameras. She cared about the sound of hooves in a stable, the bark of a rescued dog, the quiet joy of knowing she had given life where once there had only been suffering. The world still remembered her beauty, but now they also remembered her courage. And yet Brigitte herself often reflected on the strange journey she had lived. She would sit in her home in Saint-Tropez, looking out at the sea. The same sea that once carried whispers of her fame now brought her peace. Sometimes, she would smile at the irony. How she, once the face of freedom and desire, had chosen a path so different, so unexpected. But in her heart, she knew it was the right one. Brigitte often spoke of her regrets, the loneliness, the broken relationships, the misunderstandings. She admitted her mistakes. But she never regretted walking away from fame, because it was in that decision that she found her true self. The suspense of her life was never about whether she would stay a star. The real suspense was whether she would find herself. And she did. In the later chapters of her life, she became a symbol not of glamour, but of resilience, not of desire, but of compassion. The young girl who once whispered, "Who am I really?" in front of the mirror had finally found her answer. She was not just an actress, not just a model, not just a symbol. She was Brigitte Bardot, a woman who chose kindness over applause, truth over illusion, and love over glory. Her story reminds us of something deeply human, that beauty fades, fame disappears, but kindness leaves a mark no time can erase. Audiences who once adored her films now admired her courage. Generations who never saw her on the screen knew her as a defender of the voiceless. And perhaps that is the greatest transformation of all, to be remembered not for how you looked, but for what you gave. The story ends with a cinematic scene. The camera shows Brigitte walking slowly along the shore, the sun setting behind her. The waves touch her feet, the sky painted gold. Beside her, a small dog runs joyfully, free and alive. She pauses, looks at the horizon, and smiles gently. Her voice echoes softly, as if carried by the wind. I gave the world my beauty, but I gave my heart to what truly matters. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers in silence, reflecting not on fame, but on the power of choosing kindness in a world that often forgets it.